Jesus wrote the name of each stone-holding accuser, from the oldest to the youngest. They were so amazed at his supernatural knowledge that they dropped their ammunition, stunned and silenced. All accusers departed, from the oldest to the youngest. Jeremiah 17:13 is the secret to the finger-writing passage. But first, a little Hebrew history. When someone was caught in adultery, both the man and the woman would be brought to the Nikah temple gates and accused. If witnesses could be gathered to confirm that adultery had indeed been committed, then there was a certain ceremony that would be done in order to bring judgment. However, in this instance, they only brought the woman. This was a violation of the oral law of God. Secondly, the priest was required to then stoop down and write the law that had been broken, along with the names of the accused in the dust of the floor of the temple, which Jesus did actually. The priest could write the law and the names anywhere, as long as the marks were not permanent. And the dust of the floor of the temple was the most common place. By doing this, Jesus showed the accusers that they were not keeping the law, but he would anyway. As an aside, 2 eyewitnesses must be present, and there is no mention of the witnesses' presence in this scene. The scribes and Pharisees just say she was caught in the act. By whom? The scribes and Pharisees ignored the law, brought the woman only, and then continued with accusations. So Jesus, Yeshua, stood up after plainly demonstrating they were violating the law themselves, and said, "He who is without sin among you, let him first cast the stone at her." They did not want to cast a stone. They wanted Yeshua, Jesus, to condemn her. So they continued accusing. To totally comprehend the verse that answers this age-old question, we need to know a little Hebrew. Every year on Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, the Kohen HaGadol, high priest, would immerse up to 11 times in a mikveh, a baptismal tank, in order to be ceremonially cleansed between each separate portion of the day's sacrifices. At the end of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, there was a celebration at his home, and there would be a great rejoicing that God had received the sacrifice, and everyone's sins had been rolled forward another year, until Messiah came. To end the day and announce to everyone the pie was over, it was time to go home, the high priest would come out and quote this verse. O Yahweh, the mikveh of Israel, just as the mikveh purifying bath cleansed me on this day. May the Holy One, Messiah, blessed be his name, cleanse all Israel when he comes. Jeremiah 17:13. Although Yom Kippur was not a feast of Ascension, many Jews would come up for it anyways, because of its close relationship in time to the Feast of Booths, Tabernacles, or Sukkot. The entire verse is as follows. Hope of Israel, Adonai, all who abandon you will be ashamed. Those who leave you will be inscribed in the dust, because they have abandoned Adonai, the Lord, the source of living waters. Jeremiah 17:13. Hebrew translation. O Yahweh, the Immerser, baptizer of all of Israel, all those who leave your way shall be put to shame, publicly embarrassed. Those who turn aside from my ways will have their names written in the dust and blotted out, for they have departed from Yahweh, the fountain of Mayim Hayim, the waters of life. So Yeshua gave them a chance. They could have been just embarrassed and then repented before the Lord, but instead they refused to repent, rejected the Messiah, and in turn had their names written in the dust. This passage in Jeremiah is a messianic prophecy of what Jesus would do when he came. And in this passage of John, we see Jesus fulfill the prophecy, John 8:9. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest even to the last, and Jesus was left alone. And the woman standing in the midst, they heard the voice of God in their conscience, the Spirit of God bringing to their remembrance all the times they heard the high priest quote the verse, but instead of receiving the conviction and repenting, they departed from him, just as it was prophesied. They left from the eldest to the youngest, the older having heard the verse quoted more often. Verses John 7:37-39 occurred just prior to this incident. Jesus had just proclaimed that he was the fountain of living waters.